Hello, everybody. This is Vicki Markison, and you are in my house, which feels very odd, as I have said before. So I welcome you. I know Maggie has active people. Maggie on our team has active people still coming in, but we wanted to give you a quick update on what's happening. To give Maggie a little bit more time, I'm going to screen share here, which did not work so well last time, but it's going to work beautifully this time. So I have here, I think, in front of you, our website, and it has some of our updates here. So a quick run through of what you are looking at. And I should also mention, there is a chat bubble down at the bottom of your screen. So if you have questions at any time, certainly type them into that chat area and we will try to address those. So a couple of quick things on our website. That's the central hub for everything that we send out. A couple of things. The recording from yesterday, if you weren't able to make it, is in the center of the screen. We will also update what our topic is for the day. We are trying to be consistent and do these at 3 o'clock every day. It's amazing how many other webinars start popping up, but that is our plan. Tomorrow we will have either the our federal electeds, if they are willing to come on. We're arranging that because, of course, they did pass a relief plan. And so we're getting details on that today and then hope to have them live tomorrow to bring those to you. And then also we have the space where you can register. Don't forget, anybody else you want to add to our email chain can get signed up in the gray area by providing their email. And then something that is brand new, because I learned from my clunky email send today to really develop those emails out on our website. So today's chamber email is here. I also want to point out one thing I forgot in there was our medical equipment. So both of our hospitals are wanting to identify who has medical equipment. The strategy's changed a little bit. We had a form on there. Both Mayo and Gunderson have said that they prefer that we have people call their foundations with information, and so that has changed. The other thing that has changed on our website is the safer at home, essential and non-essential businesses. If you go to that, it essentially has a little bit more categories, larger categories listed for who is considered essential. And then if you want the drill down, you can read the governor's order. We did also add in a webinar from Missy Hughes yesterday. So Missy Hughes is the head of WDC. Her office technically is in charge of answering questions from businesses. And I'll run through some highlights of what Missy spoke about during that session. And then the state offered a safer at home FAQ that is provided here. So let me very quickly pull open this highlight. So what we try to do on our team is literally we have 3 team members watching webinars throughout the day and then trying to give you the bullet points because we barely have time for it, let alone you all. So essentially, didn't mean to start essentially when we're talking about essential and non-essential businesses, but the overarching guidelines that we heard from Missy are basically go out only for food, for medicine, and going to the doctor, and do so individually. So we start to get into the weeds when the questions are asked of, if a business owner goes to their business to clean it out and they're not in contact with anyone, is that okay? And Missy Hughes said, this is not martial law. No one needs to go out with a note. That is not required. It certainly doesn't hurt, but it's people doing the right thing. So if you're not going to have contact with people, if you're not going to stop at 40 customers along the way to get to your business to clean it out, that is okay. We can't do it in mass. And then the obvious thing is wash your hands before you go in, wash your hands when you get back to wherever you're going in case there's anything that could get spread. So those were really the highlights from WEDC. There's a link there to their full website, and it essentially has a form in there. If you have any gray areas about what you are doing as a business, there's a form there. If you are essential or non-essential, that is the place to ask questions of WEDC. And what they said is, if they're seeing some common areas that are continuing to be asked, they will put out an update that will provide more clarity. And so those are the highlights from WEDC and the webinar yesterday. I will tell you there was also an SBA, so SBA loans. There's a webinar out there as well. That would be under our funding area of the website. Again, a reminder of this open and closed business. And honestly, I'm getting to the point where I can't remember what I've told you all, what I haven't, sorry about that. So the open and closed business is the essential businesses order created grayness. So if you're going to say, I need more supplies for my business, is this place open or not? Basically, we're asking businesses that are open to go into this open business area and fill out our form here under add your company, and then you will appear under the see who's open. And the see who's open is oh, look at that. I had one here when I clicked on this yesterday. So bottom line, the idea of this is, are they open? Are they welcoming new customers? Are they really full and just only servicing the ones that they can handle? This can be sorted here by the type of business to make this easier. But this is really encouraging. So our businesses are using this. You can see their points of contact. And then one more thing that's important about this is, we are launching a jobs, let's just call it a jobs board on Facebook. So as many of you know, the workforce is having to shift from, hey, they no longer work at an essential business, they still need a paycheck, and we have the ability to move them to an essential business. And so we have asked on this form too, who is hiring? And then the contact information is in this form and is used by our team to do some reaching out. So let me take you very quickly. I just wanted to look at these other areas to make sure I'm not missing anything big. Today's chamber email, you got it. I'm just gonna run through it because some people are verbal processors. So you're on the chat, so you know about it, yay. Some federal headlines. As I said, federal government has passed a COVID stimulus plan. Safer at Home, that's talking about Missy Hughes updates. The governor's FAQs, I covered those. Train. So unfortunately, Train gets to be one of the first few businesses that had a positive test with an employee. And so there's a link to how they handled that. So that starts to set a best practice for the rest of us. I've also heard the SBA for that loan is flooded. The website crashed. None of the links are working. Calling is not getting people through, so just be patient. An update that La Crosse County now has 10 confirmed COVID cases. The state legislature is preparing for a virtual session. I did actually get a text from Jennifer Schilling's chief of staff, who I love it when they reach out and say, hey, we're talking to the governor, what should we be talking to them about? Here is what I am hearing from all of our businesses. Cash is king right now. Anything we can do to save cash is really important. And so we have asked, along with several others, to see if that if the second payment on property taxes can be delayed. And so that is something that the state legislature has to take up. Even though you pay your local municipality, it is regulated by the state legislature. And so we are hoping that that can get put in place. Again, it's not free taxes, it's a delay of your taxes. So we're hoping that gets taken up pretty quickly. Couple of other things. I think I ran you through most of these, but the big thing, as I mentioned, we have a Facebook jobs page that we are launching. We're waiting to go public with it because we want employers to have some jobs there before the public sees it and says this isn't even worth returning to. We don't want that. So we want your hiring person to be aware of the page, but also we want, as you are posting positions that you have open, to be using this jobs in lacrosse hashtag, because as we go and I think it's called scrape the internet for who is hiring, that is a really easy way for us to see who's hiring and to share that out. A couple of more quick things just out in the community. Fees are being waived for Wisconsin parks, so anybody can go and use those, of course, with social distancing, and be careful too, as they say, the virus can sit on things for 3 days. So don't sit on benches. Try not to touch things that other people have touched, and you should be faring much better. Mayo Clinic pharmacies offer curbside pickup. Higher COVID test production. So FEMA has the ability in a crisis to enact the Defense Production Act, which allows for faster production of certain things needed in a crisis. So they have enacted that. The job centers are closed, blood is needed. And then it's always nice to end on a feel good, and that is that the amazing Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration have given $500,000 to the COVID Assistance Fund. And so I'm going to stop sharing here. It does not look like we have any chats from the bubble that is showing up there. And so I'm going to take us to our speaker today, who is John Honedell, who is a partner with Wipfli. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to identify what are the frequently asked questions that are flooding some of our resource businesses. Of course, accountants are one of those. And so we have John on the phone here with us, and he's going to talk about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That's a mouthful. And it has two provisions. One is mandatory sick leave for I believe it's small, well, it's not mandatory. Well, I'll let John explain it before I botch it. And they're getting lots of calls because the second thing is the expansion of FMLA, the Family and Medical Leave Act. And so, John, I know you are on the phone with us. I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, just to make sure you can hear me, Vicki. Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much. I think Maggie may try to share her screen here if things work. Yep, perfect. Thank you very much, Maggie. Like Vicki said, everybody's trying to keep up on everything that's going on right now and so forth, and it's clearly a challenge for all of us as we kind of search through these very uncertain times. So Wipfli's been trying to publish as much information as we can, not unlike what Vicki went through with the Chamber website. And what we've done is on our homepage, we have a link for COVID-19 Resource Center, which you can see right here right now on Maggie's screen. And if she scrolls down just a bit there, you'll see some buttons kind of in the middle now: talent and strategy, business finance, legislation, and so forth. And then there's a bunch of articles listed below, or you can just click on one of those links if you want it to kind of take you straight down to a section. So what I'm going to talk about today would be under the legislation and regulation tab. So we can see if that'll work for us. There we go. And about the fifth article down, I think it is there, COVID-19, or I'm sorry, another one got added, so it moved down to the sixth one, how the Family First Response, Coronavirus Response Act will impact you. So I wanted to mention that where this is, so people aren't feverishly trying to take notes as I was yesterday on an internal webinar that we were having. But I'll walk through kind of the high points of the act here. Like Vicki said, there are two primary provisions. One is emergency paid sick leave, and the second is Family Medical Leave Expansion Act. Under the emergency paid sick leave, right at the bottom of the screen, you can see there's some bullets there. So there's basically 6 provisions, or 6 kind of, I guess, groups or characteristics under which this could apply. It applies to businesses with less than 500 employees, and it also does cover nonprofit organizations as well. The first 3 bullet points there, I'll paraphrase as being situations where essentially an employee cannot come to work because they specifically are being personally impacted by the coronavirus. So it could be that they are seeking medical diagnosis, as it mentions in the first point, could be that they have basically been told by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, or the third one, which is I think the one that people are struggling with the most, would be if an employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. A lot of this information, in times like this, laws get passed, acts get put into place, and then the devil's in the details of trying to sort through it. And certainly this situation is no different than that. Our interpretation on that third point about federal, state, and local quarantine or isolation is that something like the Wisconsin Safer at Home, whatever act, I guess, that was put into place, or order that was put into place effective this morning, it does not qualify under this federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order. I haven't seen anything real specific as to what would qualify there, but I think Vicky's point about, you can go out to get groceries, or to go to the gas station or something like that. Clearly, if people are doing those things, they're not, quarantined in the strictest sense of the word. So, the Safer at Home Act would not qualify under that third bullet point in our reading of the law. There's 2 benefits available, and I guess I should back up a little bit. So the sick time piece is 80 hours, up to 80 hours of paid time off. If you fall into one of those first 3 bullets, you are eligible to receive your normal daily pay rate up to $511 per day, which would be just over $5,000 if the full 2 weeks was utilized. The next 3 bullet points are a lower benefit. And again, kind of paraphrasing or trying to summarize, it's essentially situations where someone isn't able to come to work because they have some other impact in their personal or family life. The easiest, most obvious one would be someone with children who can't go to daycare or school right now because those facilities are closed. That is a significantly lower benefit. It's 2/3 of a person's regular pay, or $200, whichever is less. So maximum benefit there for $2,000 for those 2 weeks of sick time for people that fall into those categories. The second part of this act is the Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act. Essentially what this does is it provides up to 12 weeks off for people who are impacted by the COVID-19 virus. The first 2 weeks are unpaid. However, I think the theory under those being unpaid would be that if you were home taking care of children, for example, you'd qualify under the sick pay portion for those first 2 weeks of pay. But then weeks 3 through 12 are paid, which is certainly different than normal FMLA rules. There are some restrictions, and I don't want to dive too deep because I know we've got a diverse audience on today, but there are some provisions specific to employers with less than 50 employees. And the benefit on the FMLA is consistent with the benefit for that lower group, if you will, the $200 per day that is available under the sick pay portion of the act. So a question that may come up is, well, how does all this get paid for? Who's really paying these dollars out of pocket? And essentially, the way it's getting paid for, if you want to scroll down a little bit, Maggie, that'd be great, is by tax credits, as you can see there now on the screen. So the federal government is providing tax credits, or allowing companies to take tax credits to offset the cost of paying these benefits for the sick time. And sorry, I saw a message pop up on the bottom of the screen. I got distracted for a moment there. So they're using tax credits to allow employers to pay people during this time off, and then you're able to take a credit back against your payroll tax deposits that you'd be paying in. So depending on how large you are as an organization, those deposits could be due as quickly as with each payroll, or they could be due on a less frequent basis. But when that tax deposit would typically be made, you get to reduce it by the amount of sick pay that you've paid, or FMLA Expansion Act payments that you've made to employees. Example actually from the Department of Labor website would be if you had paid out $5,000 in sick leave during a pay period, and you otherwise would have been required to make an $8,000 tax deposit to the IRS, you would be able to reduce that by the $5,000 and pay in the net of $3,000 to the IRS on your normal deposit date. Second example would be if your sick pay was 10 grand and you had $8,000 that would otherwise be owed, you basically wouldn't have to pay in anything. And then is supposed to be, and I have not seen anything on this yet, but there's supposed to be a mechanism coming to allow for filing of a request for an accelerated credit to get that remaining $2,000 back. Another thing that is at this point, I'll say probably murky at best, is the effective date on the bottom there. It's effective no later than 15 days following the enactment of the law, which based on the enactment date would mean April 2nd. What that exactly means as far as effective is a little uncertain, whether that would be effective for tax filings or tax payments you're making as of that date, or whether it would be time off under the sick provision or the FMLA provision beginning on that date of April 2nd. So we are hoping that there'll be clarification on that in the days to come. But at this point in time, we can't really provide any firm guidance on what that would be. Certainly, we, as Vicki said about the Chamber website, we're also trying to update our resources out here as quickly as we can, while also trying to make sure that the information that we're providing, has been properly vetted and is accurate, to the best of the information that's available at this point in time. So I think that's probably really what I wanted to summarize. So I don't know, Vicki, if you had any questions or comments, or kind of where you wanted to go from here.
There is one question, which is what's stopping all of our employees, being this person's employees, from taking the 2 weeks off without pay? Does an employer have the right to deny sick time off?
My understanding is that under this law, this emergency sick leave, well, actually, you know what? It's a fair question. I don't know that this is mandatory, or if it's just allowing the opportunity for the benefit. Certainly, because you're getting a tax credit back for it, there wouldn't seem to me to be a reason for an employer not to provide the benefit. I mean, really, at the end of the day, the IRS, federal government, really comes back to all of us, of course, because we're all taxpayers, but it's really the federal government that's ultimately paying the benefit. So I'm not sure if that specifically answers the question, but it's probably the best I can offer at this moment.
So my understanding, and correct me, John, the last thing I had read is, so as a, for example, our chamber, who has technically, I think it's 8 paid employees, but some of those are interns, that the FMLA does not apply. And so this is opening up the opportunity for businesses to offer this to their employees with a tax credit. But I understand that there's a amendment or a component of it, let's put it that way, that says small businesses do not have to offer this if it's going to be detrimental to keeping their business operational. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that is and I tend to work with businesses that probably are a little bit larger than that 50 employees. So, we're all, I think nowadays kind of focusing on what's most relevant to us because there's so much information coming at us. But yeah, that's right, Vicki. That less than 50 employee provision is, I think, exactly what you're talking about. It's that opportunity where if a company can't offer that because they just wouldn't be able to operate, they aren't going to be forced to offer. Presumption being if you have more than 50 employees, you typically would be able to shuffle duties around and so forth to be able to cover easier than a small employer with 10 or 15 people.
I do have two people on here that say the DOL has a notice saying that the benefits are effective April 1st. So that's just an FYI coming from two people in the chat here. Another question, what if enough employees take off with sick time pay and they can't run their business? So I think we somewhat addressed that. This is optional. And forgive me, John, because you've looked at it far more than I have. Does sick only pertain to COVID? This isn't just covering all sick time, correct?
Correct. It is COVID-19 related illness or childcare not being in place because of COVID-19 restrictions or precautions.
Okay. And then another question, is there any direction for employees under a collective bargaining agreement? If we are required to pay those employees, are we required to pay benefits for those union employees?
I am not going to claim to be a labor union law expert, so I would suggest that would be the place to go with that question.
Okay. Another question, if an employee has been laid off but has childcare issues, does that laid off employee qualify for the FFCRA paid leave?
Again, some of the questions are getting detailed, which I appreciate. I am not well enough versed on this at this point in time to address specifically with laid off employees. I know that the information that I was receiving yesterday afternoon was that certainly we were encouraging folks before they lay people off to really try to dive into the details and understand things better. And if they could hold off on layoffs for a brief period of time to see the additional guidance that comes out from the DOL, that would probably be prudent. Obviously, there's a potential cash flow cost component to that, but our concern is that laid off employees, if you brought them back, they may very well not be eligible for these benefits.
Okay, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, because HR is not my strong suit in terms of how it legally operates, but my understanding from what was passed is this is if COVID has caused illness within your business, that this is something that you can offer as a way that if someone becomes sick from COVID, that this can help pay, or has someone sick at home. Again, it's related to illness, not layoffs. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so if someone's laid off and there's no illness related to it whatsoever, this tax credit does not apply.
Correct. So yeah, I want one scenario, I guess maybe just kind of put it in a kind of an example format would be, if we have a company that has whatever, 40 employees, and they they have to shut down because of the Safer at Home Act, to the extent that those people, the way I understand it, I should qualify the way I understand it, to the extent that some of those 40 employees have children at home, that type of thing, they probably would be able to receive this benefit. But for someone like myself, whose youngest is 20 years old, I probably would not.
Sure. Okay. Oh, two more messages. Sorry. Do you have any suggestions for paperwork to collect to prove that they qualify? They've been instructed not to overwhelm the healthcare system, but what other options do they have? Yeah, so the La Crosse County Health Department has said do not ask for a note. They just don't have the capacity to do that. And even best practices have been saying don't require a note. And so what is this is somewhat falling into the HR realm of what do you do and to make sure people qualify?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, and I'm not an HR professional either, Vicky, just like you. Um, I guess I would say, I mean, try to get whatever, kind of contemporaneous information that you can. We're all conscious of HIPAA laws as well, and not asking too many questions about people's health situation and so forth. So I think unfortunately, it's not comforting, but you just need to try to get the best information that you can. I know one other thing that actually isn't in this article, but the one that has been mentioned is that the Department of Labor has come out and said that they understand this is going to be challenging for everyone. And so I can't remember exactly how they have it phrased, but basically over a 30-day period here, I mean, they're essentially saying they're going to, kind of back off on enforcement. Not that they don't want people to follow the rules, but they, more important to try to make sure people are getting the benefits they should and so forth. So they do have this 30-day non-enforcement period. Essentially, it's requiring, good faith effort to comply with the act. So I think, you get what you can, try to document it the best you can. Beyond that, I don't really have any specific recommendations.
So one of the interesting things, and you hinted at this, well, actually you said it, which sparked it in my head, which is we have heard that it's the American with Disabilities Act, HIPAA, essentially is saying that if you have someone who is sick on your workforce who you want to go have tested, for those of you who are still essential, that you have to make sure that you are protecting their identity. And then my understanding is that if that person tests positive for COVID, they will come to the employer and say, this person has tested positive, and then we need to know who they have come in contact with. So where this gets gray is if you are a non-essential employer and this person got sick, whether or not it was contracted while they were working for you, that's where that's going to get gray as to what notifications the employer gets. But again, not official, but this is what I believe I've been hearing. If you have someone who is tested positive for COVID-19, the health department is reaching out to you because they also want to quarantine anybody that person came in contact with. So that I would think somewhat alleviates the concerns of who tests positive and who tests negative, but I can reach out. I'll make a note here to reach out to the county health department about that because that would be the ultimate, right? If you're not contacted, that person probably does not have COVID-19 if they chose not to get tested. So I'll ask the county health department that. Okay, more questions. Sorry, while I write that down. I think I missed a couple, so I got to go back here. Is anyone else getting direction that the state is requiring a written plan for those employers who are essential? I have not heard that. Melissa, John, have you heard anything?
I have not heard anything. I know right before we started this call this afternoon, I saw an email pop into my inbox that our internal legal counsel actually has drafted and is providing a letter to our associates who are considered essential, so that they have it. But I don't, that may be a little bit of an abundance of caution on our part. I'm not sure. We are accountants. We tend to be fairly conservative in nature when we approach uncertainty.
And let's put it this way, it doesn't hurt to have a plan. So the suggestion is if you are essential, make sure you have a plan. And Melissa, knowing what you do, make sure that your subcontractors and everybody, that your vendors have plans as well, because obviously that has a ripple effect. So if they're coming onto the same place as your employees, that would be really important to make sure you just have wide coverage. And if anybody needs a plan, we can certainly try to post that. So this is where I say, okay, email us. And our email is info@lacrossechamber.com. Again, info@lacrossechamber.com, and say, yes, I need a plan. And we will, that's a cue for us to develop that as a resource for you. Okay, here's a comment. I'm reading these without screening them first. Sorry, John. So regarding collective bargaining agreements, my understanding is that there is a provision in the law that overrides the agreements to allow union employees to receive the new benefits. So that's coming from someone else. And again, that's great. It steers somebody in the right direction. Just don't take that as legal and sound advice. So obviously pursue that with the labor unions would be a smart idea, but thank you for sharing that. There is a child care provision that is part of this act, and the tax credit for those individuals that have no child care due to COVID-19. This isn't actual illness or exposure, but lack of child care. Okay, it's the 2/3 of wages up to $200 per day for weeks 3 through 12 of no daycare. It's eligible for tax credit according to my understanding, just confirming. Sorry, I read that fast, John.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Actually, I figured
Okay.
out how to pull it up on my screen, so I was
Good,
reading
good,
along
good.
with you, Vicki. Yeah, no, I would say confirmed. Yes, that is accurate. That's really the family medical leave expansion portion of the overall FFCRA Act, if I can try to use the acronym.
Yes. So a couple of these all start to get around proof, right? So proof of illness, proof of no child care. Are you seeing anything that has to get submitted, John?
No, not at this point. I have not. We are recommending, and this isn't really proof from that perspective, but we are recommending, and we're seeing payroll providers, try to kind of segregate or differentiate the compensation that's being paid under the under this act from other compensation that may be paid. So certainly, I guess one maybe point, just kind of from in case it matters, this isn't restricting what people can be paid. It's the portion that the government will reimburse for through the tax credits. So if someone had a person who qualified under that, they have a kid at home that needs care, if an employer still wanted to pay that person $300 a day, let's say, because that's their normal pay rate, instead of them being limited to the $200, the employer certainly can do that. That's their choice. The government will only reimburse the $200, and what we're recommending is try to work within your software or with your software provider, or your payroll provider, I should say, to maybe segregate those into separate codes, so that the $200 goes into one pay code and the $100 in my example goes into a different pay code, so that you have good tracking if or when you need to go back to it later. As far as the proof goes, though, I mean, I'm not sure how you even do that. If your daycare provider's closed, I'm not sure how you get a letter from them or something to prove it. And I guess at this point, maybe I'm being naive. Again, I mentioned, my 20-year-old doesn't need daycare at this point, but I don't know that there's many daycares that are open unless you happen to be across the river, maybe in La Crescent or something.
There was a question, which is, does the leave have to be continuous, intermittent, full days?
Yeah, great question. Not that the others aren't, but I say that because it's the third time I've gotten it today. I have not, this is going to be negative assurance. I have not seen anything saying it needs to be continuous. One thing I didn't mention, but I think it's kind of in the bottom of the article, is the act is in place through 12/31 of 2020 at this point. Certainly, we all hope that COVID-19 will be in the rearview mirror largely by that point in time. So from that date, I personally infer that it does not have to be continuous, but I've done a fair bit of research on that and I can't find anything that's explicit either way.
Okay. Any other questions out there for John? Okay, thank you, John. I did get an update from the federal stimulus package. So someone with the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce said that the good news, he was just on a conference call and just got done. The good news is that there's $2 trillion in the plan. It will be voted on tomorrow. So remember, it's stalled. They went through negotiations, and so it will get voted on. So it's more likely to get passed, but it's government, so you never know. And one of the things that was being included is nonprofits like chambers and business organizations that would be part of it. They have been, it's unlikely, which impacts me, does not impact the bulk of you, but 501c3s are included, so that will be the bulk of the charitable organizations. And so that is the little bit that is leaking out about federal government. So we're gonna do something awkward because I see, unless Maggie has a magic side of what she shows, what we're going to do is try to get a pulse of what you guys are hearing out there. And so here's what I'm going to recommend. Maggie, are you able to come on audibly? Is that the right word? Do we have the ability for people to raise their hand where we can unmute their mic or not? Ms. Maggie? I'm going to guess not. So here's what I'm going to tell you guys to do. If you, bottom line, here's my question. How is it that you are adapting your business? What are you doing different? And if you have something to share, if you want to just quick say I do in the chat, and we will unmute your mic. Or let's do, we've been in contact. Let's do this. Sorry, we're making this up because we haven't done a free-for-all yet. So if you have something to say, unmute your mic and type your name in the box, and you type in your name. So who's doing something different than you were doing before?
Vicki, can you repeat the end of that? I had to remute everyone.
Yes. Okay. So my question for you is, if you are operating in a different way, obviously don't say, hey, we're remote working, because most of us are doing that. But if you have adapted your business in a way that you think is remarkable for other businesses, put your name in the chat, and then we will unmute the mic so that you can speak. Nobody's doing anything innovative out there. Okay, well then I'm going to share the one thing that we put out on Facebook this morning was our board members. So our board members yesterday, we had a board meeting. We did it all through Zoom. It was fun to see everybody where they're working and what pets they have. And one of our board members had a dog barking, and he called it his receptionist has spoken. So, but bottom line, what they were struggling with is, how do you start to create a sense of culture when you are all working remote? And so we put two things out on the, we put two things. I'm sorry, Maggie, if you can unmute Shelly, that would be awesome while I keep finishing. So two of the things that our board members shared was they shared a very funny video, which is out on Facebook. And then the second thing that people talked about was they have employees that are doing virtual lunches. They have employees that are sending around photos of their pets, just some things to create a sense of connection as we head into a lot of remote workforce. So Shobi, you are there, and you are,
Hello.
You're open. Yeah, go ahead, Shobi.
Hi. Yeah, so something that we've done we have everybody working remotely as well. So we have typically a morning meeting. And so we've been doing that morning meeting on, we've done it on Zoom. We've also done it on Facebook Messenger. We like Facebook Messenger because we can do it on our phones and still see everybody. But one thing that we have changed or started doing is we have every day the team says what they're grateful for. So we started out slow. So like Monday, they have to list at least one thing, and then Tuesday, two, and so on and so forth. But it's so easy to get wrapped up in the negativity and wrapped up in the stress and wrapped up in everything that's going on, that if we're focusing on that positive, like the staff will tell me, I thought about it all morning. I was showering and I was thinking about what am I grateful for? And, focusing your mind on those things that you're grateful for can really just set the mood for the day. So that's been really helpful, beneficial. I tried to make them do a dance party today, but nobody was feeling it. So I was dancing by myself. They also couldn't hear my music, so that's a kink we're working on.
Ah, darn. Well, it's okay to dance without any music. Nobody's going to complain about that. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Shobi, who are you with?
I own Referral Staffing Solutions, so we
Yeah.
do staffing and recruiting services.
Excellent. Great. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we unintentionally, I guess there is a raise your hand button out there, so that's great to know. One of the things we did as a chamber staff, unintentionally, the very first time a few of us took pictures of what our view is from our new domain, so to speak. So that was just a way to see everybody else's perspective, because we're used to being in the same room together. So anything else that businesses are doing in terms of how you're working with remote workforce? I'm going to throw another thing out that I've been hearing, which is some of the retailers, I don't know how many we have on the line here, but they are struggling, restaurants, retail, saying, hey, if we don't get something in the next month here, we're really going to be hurting. So I do know that WDC has been working on how to reboot our businesses from that perspective, and how they can really, they're looking at it from a coffee shop perspective as a, for example, saying, hey, that coffee shop needs to get going again. How do I have the cash to make sure that I can buy everything to restart up? Because obviously the longer they go, the zero income that they have coming in. If they've extended payroll, that's some expenses there. And a month is a very long period of time. So WDC and the state has left it open. I shouldn't say left it open. They have not said that April 24th is a hard stop or restart. I think they gave themselves some wiggle room there to see how things shake out, and to give them time to just give them to set the expectations for a month. But if things happen sooner, I don't want to give too much hope there, that they may change the date. So anybody else with thoughts or ideas or needs? So you've heard me talk about the property tax bill, getting that deferred for a period of time. Anything else, any great ideas out there as to what is needed to help our businesses at this point in time? Nothing. That's okay. I'm not going to keep you on the phone or the video, however you've come in, longer than we need to, but I just wanted to open it up because it's a chance to connect with others. Thank you all for using the chat. That was fantastic. And like I said, we are trying either to get someone from federal government on to talk about this package, although my guess is if they're voting on it, we probably would not be looking at tomorrow for hosting that. And so we're trying really hard to get somebody to talk about how to conserve cash during these times. And as I said to Angie on our team, there's no one like Gary Rudy, who runs Rudy's Drive-In, that of course closes during the winter, to talk about cash management. So if we can get him on, we would love to do that. He of course is involved with the Restaurant Association, and so that's an opportunity to connect with that industry as well. So any concerns, any needs, certainly let us know, and we will be in touch, but otherwise we will give you an update on all of the webinars that we are monitoring today as well. Our goal is to watch the hours of those so that we can give you the highlights and to keep you up to date on things that are impacting the businesses. So thanks very much. Be well, as I keep saying, wash those hands, and I wish you and your families the very best. Have a good rest of your day.